Now, to give you a little, I wanted to give you a little bit of a background about Chef Julian because he's a great guy. He's been with us for some time. Chef Julian is a native Washingtonian. He's been around for over 20 years in our culinary experience in the culinary industry. And after college, he spent some time in the Marines. And Julian returned and decided to follow his cooking passion that led him to achieve his culinary degree at Marietta, Georgia. And his restaurant and catering experience has spanned globally, from teaching local community colleges here in the States to traveling to South Korea, Turkey, and has a strong connection to Italian fare that you'll soon see here in our class. Now, he returned back to DC in 2016 and joined our Manja DC team. All right, now before we begin, just wanted to have a few housekeeping items and we'll go ahead and get started, okay? So I'll be in the background for today's class. Now, if you have a question about the dish, ask it in that chat screen. Chef Julian's going to do his best to show the class. We're also going to be having the opportunity to actually stop and ask questions as he's cooking so we can help address questions on the fly there, okay? After the class, check your email. We're going to be uploading the recipes as well as the video. That might take between just immediately after and maybe about 24 hours to try and get that to you, and we'll do our best to get that. The email is going to be sending you a link to join our Facebook group where everything's going to be posted, and don't worry about that. We'll have a blast with that, guys. All right, so without further ado, would love to pass the baton over to Julian. Well, you'll talk a little bit more about this class. Get pumped up. All right.
All right, so we're going to start off with a basic ravioli dough that we're going to turn into tortellinis, and it's pretty easy. I know it sounds way more intense than it is. So we're going to start off with about a small, about a 12-ounce container of ricotta. And to that, we're going to add some frozen peas, about a cup, but we don't really need all of it. I would also add a little lemon zest to this. But because we're doing a pantry class, you may not have fresh lemons during this time. So you could always add maybe some basil, some oregano. We all have extra spices sitting around. And we're going to take that, we're going to mix that up. How's that sound? Is that ASMR?
Sounds great.
This is a lot of filling. It's going to last. This will probably make way more than we need. You can always save this. Maybe use it as a filling in your omelet, or if you wanted to make lasagna leftover, you can always throw that in there. So now the dough. In this bowl, I have 2 cups of flour. I'm going to add 3 eggs. Say my normal pleasantries I say when we do our classes, Dave. How's everybody doing? Where you from?
You were on mute at the beginning. That's why. We couldn't hear anything that you were saying.
They didn't hear my joke about whether or not I'm wearing pants or shoes? I'll never tell.
Oh, no, we did not hear that. You're not wearing any pants underneath that, huh? That's great. Wonderful.
Maybe we'll make that a prize. Is Chef wearing pants or shoes?
Perfect.
All right, so we've got our 3 eggs going in our 2 cups of flour. And we're going to mix this up until we incorporate all the eggs, and we're looking for the consistency, not the consistency, but the color of maybe a good vanilla ice cream, like a pale yellow. Now, it's 2 cups of flour is what the recipe says, but you got to play it by ear sometimes because humidity levels, a lot of stuff can affect pasta. The age of your pasta, it stormed earlier, I think, so the air could be a little different, which is why most bakers weigh their ingredients.
What type of flour are you using?
I am using all-purpose flour. Again, it's a pantry class, and even if I were doing this myself, I would use all-purpose. Could you go out and buy some super sexy Italian double-off flour that you got from, the fields of heaven? Yeah, but we're doing our pastry class, or we're doing our pasta class based on what we probably have at home. So once I have that pretty well incorporated, I'm going to add a tablespoon of olive oil. I'm using olive oil, one of our partners that we do classes with, Georgetown Olive Oil. We did a class a couple weeks ago up there at their shop with Emil, who was extremely helpful. It was a good time. Let us sample all types of olive oil. So this is about a tablespoon of olive oil. We're going to incorporate that into the oil. Now, this is where it can get a little crazy. Don't feel like you have to get all the pasta off the bottom of the bowl. I mean, all the flour off the bottom of the bowl. You don't need to do that. Just get as much as you can until it pulls away. Now it's time to get in there with your hand. What I'm doing is I'm just kind of pushing it down, not necessarily kneading it, because we're not looking for kneaded dough. One of the things I forgot to add was salt, but if you're not at this point, you can put a little sprinkle of salt in there. That's about a quarter tablespoon or so. So notice what I have in my hand is really what I want to work with. That left in the bottom, I'm not going to try to get that. I could, but again, you end up fighting it and really working your dough too much. So that's why the 2 cups that I suggested earlier was to suggest perhaps start off with a cup and a half and then kind of maybe add a half a cup as you feel the consistency. So you can't feel this through camera, or maybe you can. You're going to kind of work it until you don't see patches of white. That lets you know it's fairly incorporated. And then ideally you would let this rest for about 10, 20 minutes. I'm gonna put this here. And I'm gonna get my water going. Where's the fire extinguisher, right? And you kind of know you did a good job because you don't have too much stuff clumped in your hands. It's kind of a decent sign that you worked it fairly well.
Love that.
All right, so let's assume, let's pretend, let's do the power of television, that I've let this rest for a while. As a matter of fact, actually, it's a good time to take some questions. Dave, you got any questions?
I was going to ask, how long do you let the dough rest? Normally, how do you let the dough rest? How long do you let the dough rest?
Normally, it could be a very long time. So if I know I'm going to make this for dinner tonight with my kids, I might do it at noon and just let it hang out for hours. Or, I mean, we've done classes before where I haven't let it rest at all because, you know, the pasta gods smiled down on me and it was a perfectly smooth dough. Mm-hmm. But let's say 10 minutes because you want to give time for that moisture inside the egg whites and the water and the yolks to, what's the cooking term? Permeate, that's not the word, but you want it to go through the flour and, you know, sort of soak up into the flour. So it's not dry. If you didn't rest, it wouldn't be bad. But if you did rest, it would be a smoother dough to work. Thank you. Any other questions out there?
Brian, do you see any?
Any suggestions on how you can make it vegan and or low carb?
No, not for this one. And Dave and I talked about it before. This is definitely not the vegan low carb edition of the class. I do know that they make vegan pastas. I just don't know. I don't know how to make them, but I know that you can buy them at the stores.
When you rest the dough, is it outside or in the refrigerator?
Outside.
How much salt?
That was about a quarter teaspoon. All right.
Can you add flavor to the dough?
You could. So one of the things that you want to rest, one of the reasons you want to rest is if you want to get really fancy with your dough and maybe blend up some spinach or some ramps or something like that. Some pasta recipes you'll find call for water. What you would do is you would use those flavored waters as substitute. So if you've ever had green tortellini or anything like that, that's what they've done. They've taken the water from any pureed veggies or whatever that they've had and use that to moisturize the dough.
Chef, we have another question. Do you cover the dough? And if you cover the dough, how do you cover it?
Depends on how long I would set it out. If I were just notice the underside is a lot more smoother than here. That actually fits perfectly with this question. So I would cover it with just a kitchen towel or maybe a lightly damp paper towel. Just wrung out as much water as you can. Just kind of hang it out on top. All right. So now we're going to form our tortellini. So in this class, I'm going to do 2 pastas. I'm going to do the tortellini and I'm going to do gnocchi. And I'm going to wait until both of those are done to make the sauces. Maybe, I don't know. I may change the game up midstream. But we're going to make the ravioli, cook them off, and then sauce them later. So this dough, this recipe makes about 24 tortellini. Chef ain't rolling 24 tortellini out for you right now. I'll do 3 or 4 for demo. But the cool thing about pasta and any most foods that we consider national cuisines from other places tend to come to us from immigrants. And immigrants tend to be people who are trying to stretch a dollar, right? If you were doing very well in your country, why would you leave it, right? So people who come to American shores brought simple recipes that could stretch and feed a lot of people, right? This is just flour, eggs, and oil. That's all you need. If you're making bread, right, you just need flour, yeast, and water and salt. So I say that to say that this is a very simple dish that can feed a lot of people, which is cool. All right, so I'm gonna pull about that much off, which is probably a large golf ball size. When it comes to rolling dough, any dough, pasta dough, pie dough, you want to get as close to the shape you ultimately want to have before you start rolling. So I'm going to make this into rectangle-ish, right? I'm going to take a little flour and shush it on the board. That's a scientific technical term. Shush
I was going to say, I haven't heard that one. It was great. That was good.
All right. So you may not have a rolling pin, but fear not. In these times, you probably have a wine bottle, which is just as good. As a matter of fact, I think it's better because, not just because I think wine is cool, but because it's cold, right? Glass doesn't transfer, or it does transfer, which makes it colder faster. Wood, it's kind of room temperature-ish, but you've probably seen those fancy marble rolling pins. The whole idea is to keep the dough from getting too hot, especially if you were doing a pie dough, right? If you were doing a pie dough and you had bits of butter in here, the idea is to keep those butter bits in there so the pie dough gets flaky. You don't want it to melt on you. So when it comes to rolling, fight the urge to start at one end and go all the way to the other, because you're trying to flatten it out. So if you were to go all the way across and traverse this whole thing, you would push everything here over there, and then you'd be doing it forever. So you want to start in the middle, push down, push away. Turn it, start in the middle, push down, push away. All right, so that's the secret. Turn it 90 degrees, start in the middle, push down, push away. So ultimately, I am going to get this to about 1/8 of an inch. If you don't have a ruler or protractor handy, you can always just use the "can I see my fingers" test. So when you hold it up, you want to see translucence where you can see your fingers, through the light. If it's thick, no problem. It'll just be, thick dough, right? We're home alone. You can make as many batches as you want, mess them all up, and start all over. Be pasta eating crazy. All right.
I like the wine bottle. It's a nice touch.
Thank you. My daughter I won't say stole, but she made beignets for, I think it was Mardi Gras. And I took the rolling pin over, and it has not made its way back.
Well, regardless, look, we're all quarantined. We might not have all of our supplies. I think it's a great solution for what we have going on,
Indeed, right? The key to this class, and the key to, I think, just getting through this sanely is, having fun. Look at what you got, make stuff from there. My daughter came over, actually my kid, all my kids came over the other day, and I had her make some some peanut butter cookies. You know, we have tons of peanut butter in here. You know, their school does this care package they send to every kid, and they do this farmer's market thing, which is cool. They want to expose kids to good food. But my 8-year-old was like, Dad, I brought peanut butter. Yes, you brought one more jar of peanut butter. So I'm up to like 15 jars in the house. So yeah, I'm gonna make some cookies. And the recipe was pretty simple. I don't know if you're following any folks on YouTube who are kind of doing some cool stuff. Alton Brown, who's one of my fave, I guess, celebrity guys. He does this thing where it's just him in his studio making stuff. So he made a really simple 5-ingredient peanut butter cookie recipe, which, analyzing the recipe from what I know as a cook, it's probably one you can substitute any nut butter, or if you're allergic at all, just don't make them. All right, so I don't know if you can see through the light. Kind of, we're about there, right? So now we're going to look at our dough and think about an imaginary line that goes down this way. Actually, before we do that, we're making tortellini, not ravioli. So I am going to take a pint glass or any circular object you have at home. I'm going to cut me out a couple circles. Any excess dough you have, just kind of roll it back into a ball, let it hang out for a little bit, and you can roll it out some more.
Julian, we have a great question. Meredith had asked, how thick should your dough be, really, as you're making this?
1/8 of an inch. Thank you for the question. All right, so Brian, can you have your cartridge, please? All right, so we've got our ravioli, or we got our pasta cut. We are going to take it and like social distancing, Brian. Brian has 4-foot arms, which makes it easy to distance ourselves. Fire extinguisher's over there. All right, and you can't smell the burning forearm hair that just happened. That's right, Chef. It's all online for you. All right.
Chef, not to interject, just a couple of more questions just to specify.
But you're interjecting.
Yeah, not to interject, but yes, I am interjecting, correct. A couple more questions in terms of that 1/8 of an inch. Would you say that that's like the 1/8 of an inch, like a width of a penny, or something larger, or happy to?
Let's say if you can get it penny thin, go for it. The thinner, the better in terms of tenderness. But I mean, as long as you're not, you don't have this big mound of pasta dough, and it won't be that it won't be bad. It'll just feel weird. It'll be, if you try to cook it al dente, it just won't work for you. So good question. Again, this is can you see that? This is what? This is a good 1/8 of an inch, right? And I don't know if you can see my finger there, right? So all good questions.
Oh, Chef, right. that was actually a good point. You started putting 2 fingers behind. What was the point of that?
So you can't see it in camera, but I can see myself. I can see my finger shadow through there, which lets me know it's thin enough. Cool. All right. So for the filling, I'm only going to use a little less than a teaspoon, right? I know you're going to want to stuff these bad boys. Now, don't get me wrong. If you have a circle cutter that's big enough to do that, you can, but we don't normally think of tortellini as being super big, right? And what I like to do, I like to think about it is I try to get a few peas in every bite, right? Some people who don't like peas, who say they don't like peas actually like this because the frozen peas, they don't get as soggy as like a can of peas, and there's a certain sweetness that really works well in the ravioli. And if you were to have lemon zest, or you may have dried lemon zest or something in your pantry, that acidic bite mixed with that sweetness, mixed with the savoriness from the ricotta, mixed with the salt that the cheese has naturally, it really does a great job of giving you all those cool flavors. All right. So now, you may have noticed, and I didn't mention it, but I'll mention it now. I put it not in the middle, but toward this half of it, because we're going to take them, we're going to fold them back this way, and then we're going to seal them. You could use water to seal it, but you don't have to. And this is another reason why you don't want to put too much filling in there, because you can see how this kind of burst out a little bit, but it's all good. All right, again, fold it, and then crimp. You could stop here, but why? But wait, there's more. So now, you take this half moon, and you just touch the tips and give it a press. Voila, tortellini, right? Tell me they're applauding, Dave. Are they applauding in there? I'm gonna take that as a no.
If you want to pull it closer to the camera so they can just get a good angle of what you made there, that'd be great.
It's not what I asked you. I asked you if they were applauding my awesome.
Oh yes, there are a couple of claps. Yes, okay, I see the clap, guys. Clap.
There you go. All right, so what I did was I sealed that half moon, crimp it. Now again, crimping's not necessary as long as you really squeeze it, but I just think it adds also a little touch. Now I'm going to take the two tips and I'm just going to put them together and crimp it again. All right, I give it a good squeeze. All right, last one for the ladies. All right, crimp or pinch, crimp. First three were for you fellas, last one for the ladies. All right, grab the tips, pinch. All right, so this dough, as you can see, I only pulled off about a sixth of this dough. All right, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the one I already rolled. So you're looking at 24 ravioli at least from that portion. I won't roll all of them for this class, but you got the idea. And again, any other questions you may have, just let them fire. So I'm going to take, I've got my boiling water over here. Question always comes up, do you salt the water? So it depends, you salt water depending on how long something is going to be in it. So the longer a thing has to boil, the more salt you want to put in. These are fresh pasta, so they're going to cook like that, right? They're going to take about 2 minutes max to cook. So I put a quarter fistful of flour in there. This is about a gallon of water, and I put maybe 3 tablespoons of water. If you're going to do something that takes a long time, like if it's fresh pasta, right? So these are going to take 2 minutes. If it's fresh pasta, it's going to take 8 minutes. You're looking at a good fistful of salt. One of the things that we go through a lot in professional kitchens is salt and butter. Duh. So we're not afraid to use it, right? So,
hey, Chef,
yep.
Real quick, we got a couple of questions. Well, let's just go with one. Nicole had asked how you store the rest of the unused dough that's not going to be.
So depending on when you want to use it. So if you wanted to use it a day or two from now, I would put it in the fridge. If you wanted to use it longer than that, I'd put it in the freezer. Let's say 3 weeks max. It's fresh. It's pretty easy to make. I wouldn't let it hang out in the freezer longer than 3 weeks. But I've run through this stuff, so I honestly, because I've never actually saved it. But that's my suggestion. All right, so to put these in the water, you know how to do that. You don't want to drop it from up here, or it won't be fun. So I touch the water with the tortellini, and then I let it go. That way it doesn't splash on me. or you could use something like a spider or a big slotted spoon. If I were doing 24 of these, I could probably do one batch, but let's say I did 2 batches. The count starts pretty much as soon as the first one goes in, and they're done when they float. So that first one I put in, I don't know if the steam is blocking the side. That first one I put in is already starting to float.
Chef, another great question came in. Anya asked if you wanted to not necessarily put it right back into the pot, could you actually allow it to, could you preserve it in some way? Can you freeze it?
Yes, absolutely. So you could just kind of lay them all flat on a plate or a sheet pan if you got it, and then put it in the fridge for a while. This is a great make-ahead recipe if you've got a dinner party or something coming over when we're able to actually go to a dinner party. You could do, you know, a tray of these and let them hang out in the fridge for, you know, a few hours before the party. Actually, probably do it the day before and let it hang out. And then when your guests came, that's when I would drop them. So that's a great idea. Fresh, you know, even have your guests get in on it and have them all, you know, name their own tortellini. All right, good question. All right, so they're done. They're floating. I am going to take them out. So, a trick whenever you've made pasta and you're not going to do whatever you're going to do with it, go ahead and hit it with a little bit of olive oil, maybe even some salt to kind of stop it from sticking together. So we're going to do these. We're going to add these to our sauce a little bit later. Olive oil and some fresh herbs could also be a salt. So, oh, let me make them pretty. Stop, turn away, stop looking. Don't look at me.
Okay, bring it back to me for a sec, Ryan.
Yeah.
Oh, all right, okay.
That's it. I just made them pretty because, you know, this is television. We want to do stuff visually appealing for our guests.
Oh, that is beautiful.
Any questions?
I think that's great. Oh my God, there's applause. Julian, do a bow. That's great. I want to see a bow. Wonderful. Okay, so we're actually going to go, we're actually going to offer you guys a quick poll in the middle of of our class. We just got through the first dish. We're going to go ahead and give you a quick poll. Brian's going to go ahead and send that out. Should take just 60 seconds to just ask a few questions.
Is Julian wearing pants? That's the poll.
Well, who knows now, right? All right, no poll. We'll go right to the we'll go into the next dish. Sure, go ahead, Julian.
Cool. So our next dish is gnocchi, which is a potato.
Oh, hold on, Julian. Wait, poll's up. Sorry.
Poll away, people. Poll away.
While we're polling, if people are done, I can show you a little bit. This is the other co-host. This is Skylar. Do you want to say hi, Skylar? Okay, hold on, wait. Say hi, Skylar.
Devious miscreant.
He's a cute kid. Oh, I don't know if you can see him. There he is. He's a cute kitty. All right. Guy.
Cats are miscreants, evil things. They use us. I like the meme I saw where it was a cat that was like, why are you still here, human? Basically talking about like COVID, like being home all day. That was pretty cool.
It's a unique kitty cat. He's one of those that actually fetches, which is few and far between. I haven't seen any cat really do that before this one, but he's a cute guy.
That actually makes him semi-cool.
All right, well then that's good. I'm glad that I have your approval. That's great. Yeah.
All right, so we ready to go? Cool. All right, so gnocchi, right? We're gonna start off. We sent out the recipe list before. I'm just gonna cut up one potato. This is a russet potato, peeled. When you're cutting any crazy, unyielding thing, you wanna be able to level it off first, right? That way I stop it from moving. Normally my ninja-like skills would have been done with this, but I saved the samurai for you. All right, so I cut a few lines and I turned it. So I was here, turned it 90 degrees. All right, so the idea is to cut as few times as possible and to get as uniform cuts as possible. And that leftover piece I did, again, 2 cuts here, turn it 90 degrees, cut, 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 and so on, right? And this last little piece, just kind of hack that.
Can you give a quick recap of what you just did?
So I peeled the potato, I leveled off a side so it would roll around, and then I just kind of cut up as uniform pieces as possible. We have a saying in the cooking world, knife skills pay the bills. You can work a knife, you can get a job, right? So 2 of those potatoes you would cut and boil. But because of the magic of television, I already had some done. So this is 2 cups of potatoes boiled. And for gnocchi, you want a light, gnocchi is known for being almost airy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push it through a strainer. If you don't have, well, ideally I would push it through a potato ricer. But if you don't have that, just push it through any strainer you have at home. Can you see that? So what that's giving me is a nice sort of airy consistency. We call them a ricer. We want it to be like grains of rice. This is going to take a little bit of time, Dave, so I'll gladly answer some questions you got now.
All right. So great. So we have a question that came in that I helped address, but we'll ask again. You said 2 cups of potatoes.
I said 2 potatoes.
2 potatoes. Okay, thank you for that. And if you had to like measure it in some kind, because potatoes are all different sizes.
Right. You want to grab big ones, and Dave knows because we've worked together for going on 3 years now.
A long time.
I don't measure a lot of stuff because Italian cuisine, American Southern cuisine, a lot of by feeling. That being said, if you find gnocchi recipes online, they'll often say like 4 pounds of potatoes, which is like double this recipe. So that's after you skin them, peel them. So once you peel them, then you measure out whatever you need. So this recipe is just 2 large russet potatoes. And I'm going to show you why I didn't necessarily worry too much about the weight. Because again, if we're at home, right, we're self-isolating, and we don't necessarily want to run to the stores, we're going to make this out of whatever we have.
Yep. And does it matter if it's russet, or could it be golden potatoes? Could it be something else?
So potatoes tend to come in 3 categories: waxy, dry, and in between. You want a drier potato, and that would be your russets. However, you could do this with Yukons. I wouldn't do like the smaller red potatoes, because we call those potato salad potatoes, because they tend to, because they're waxy, they hold their shape better. So pushing them through the ricer like I'm doing right now could yield. Let me take that back. You could make this with any potato you have, but ideally you would want a drier potato like a russet or a baking potato. The reason they call them baking potatoes is because they tend to be dry. And you break them open, they have that fluffiness that you saturate with whatever you drench your potato in. I've got a good friend who doesn't like butter on potato, but instead uses Italian dressing. I've never done it. That sounds kind of
Substitute?
Huh?
That's definitely a substitute for sure.
Yeah.
I've seen some people that like a baked potato and sour cream make the, for lactose intolerant, they put non-sugar, sugar-free yogurt they put on there, if you believe that. So put a little dill on there, almost tastes like sour cream. Oh well, moving on.
Great idea.
There was another question came through. Ashad asked, how long are you actually boiling these potato cubes for before you get them out?
Until knife tender, which that description always drives me crazy. You can stand there and check them every 10 to 15 minutes. But if you've got a pot and you cut them like I did, right? I cut them into kind of 1-inch cubes. Try to find your biggest cube. Kind of keep an eye on that jogger, and then about 15 minutes into it, pull it out, and if you can break it really easily between your fingers or a spoon on the cutting board, then the rest of them are not, because the biggest one's going to take longer to cook.
Got it. And great.
All right, so we're about done with our potatoes here. And again, gnocchi is known for being light and fluffy, so we don't really want to not do this step, right? You could mash them with a masher, but then it wouldn't be light. It would be more like a really good potato cake, which is nothing wrong with that. I mean, if I've got leftover mashed potatoes, I'll make potato cakes for breakfast. But if you want gnocchi and you want it to be nice and light, then you want to pass it through some sort of strainer, meshy thing to get that lightness. All right, so last one done. Thank you for your patience. I want to show you that fun. All right, so now I'm hiding, you can't see me. Got a little soapy water down there to clean my hands. Wait, you can see my pants, dang. Now you know I'm wearing.
Oh, the truth shall set you free.
That's right. All right. So I've got that's a little less than a cup of flour, and I have an egg. So I'm going to again looking for that light and fluffiness. I'm going to take my flour. I'm going to put about half of this in. And then I'm going to crack this egg in here. You could beat the egg before you put it in there. It would help you blend it a little better. Not necessary, but it would be okay to do.
How much flour was that?
That was probably a half a cup. I'm going to put more in, but I wanted to get it working first before I put it in. So ultimately, you're going to put anywhere between a cup and a half and 2 cups of flour in. But again, it also depends on feel. Some people may be thinking, but I've never made these before. I don't know how it feels. You'll intuitively know whether or not you made glue or not. And you can always kind of just eyeball it based on what you've seen in this video or videos on YouTube. Like even this, right? I know that the recipe calls for a cup and a half to 2 cups. I've only put about a cup in. So I'm going to hold off because I know I'm going to also use some flour when I roll it up. So my expertise in Italian cuisine actually comes from, I'm a bigger fan of Northern Italian cuisine, and regional cuisine is usually based off of whatever grain they have and whatever is the main source of protein. So Northern Italian cuisine doesn't necessarily use a lot of flour because wheat doesn't necessarily grow in that colder area. It's a lot of corn, potatoes. So this is why gnocchi is one of those mid to Northern Italian recipes where you have to about Roma and places like that. All right. So I'm not going to roll this whole thing up. I'm going to show you how to do it. Maybe half this batch. So I've got my water back up to boiling. And I'm just going to kind of get into a log. I know this feels a little drier than I want, so I'm also going to a little wetter than I want. I'm going to dry up put some flour on my hands as well as the board. I could probably take this and break it in half and work in batches. Again, another very forgiving dish. You really can't mess this up. Worst case, you got mashed potatoes, right? You take even less than that, right? So this is pretty light. It's almost going from the ravioli tortellini flour or pasta to this. I almost feel like I messed up, but then I had to tell myself that flour is that dough is a lot more tougher than this dough. So I had to ease off and not get all Steinbeck on it and pet it too hard, right? All right. So now I'm going to cut off 1-inch pieces. All right. Kind of want to get a little flour on those just in case they dry out on you, which they won't. We're going to be moving relatively quickly. They do not have to be perfect. This is definitely a sort of macaroni and cheese-esque, like fun, comfort food sort of thing in a lot of regions. And again, the idea is really simple, right? Potatoes, flour, and an egg. You really can't go wrong with those. Won't break your bank, that is. Those of us who dibble dab in low carb and paleo-ness might not get too crazy about this, but you could use arrowroot or cassava flour instead of the regular flour, which keeps it fairly paleo-esque, right? I know there are certain camps that shun potatoes and rice, but there are certain camps who use the carb for performance. Those are a little bigger than the ones I originally did, so I need to be mindful of that. Because you do want a consistent width or length or size, because when you put them in the water, you want to make sure that they're all done. So these are going to cook up just as fast as the fresh tortellini, because we're dealing with fresh flour, fresh pasta. And the potatoes are already cooked. So you're really just kind of you're letting the egg and the flour set the gnocchi.
Jeff, we have a quick question. Diana asks, can you substitute the potato, flour? I mean, you could have potato flour, or you can just have regular flour and potato, but is there a gluten-free option? Could you use gluten-free flour?
Yes, you could. You could use cassava. You could use arrowroot. I think definitely Google that, but I've seen recipes with gluten-free options. All right. So now, gnocchi tends to have that traditional fork-looking thing that happens in the back. And all you do is very delicately, you're going to push it on the back of a fork to get those tine marks in the gnocchi. And you've probably seen, some grandmama. Oh, that thing is ugly. You might have seen some grandmamas. Oh, it's breaking up on me, right? I'm gonna try to grab some of the ones that I did a less rush of a job to roll. That first one was awesome. The rest of them look ugly. And this is optional, right? It's just, that's a traditional thing. If you're getting a certain type of pasta, you tend to like it to have a certain quality. Now, I'm going to take all of these and I'm going to drop. Actually, I'm going to start the sauce first. The sauce is extremely easy. Alfredo sauce is nothing more than cream and cheese. However, American cream tends to not have the fat content that European cream has. So we're going to fix that by adding a knob of butter to it. You don't need to make this sauce at all. As a matter of fact, I'll probably just throw some leftover tomato sauce I had in the fridge on the gnocchi. So I'll use the Alfredo sauce for the tortellini. All right, so we've got our cream going. We're going to add, that is about a cup of cream. We're going to add about 1/3 of a stick of butter to it. Again, this is just to up the fat content. Rumor has it there was a model or a aristocrat who went to some famous restaurant, and there was a maitre d' named Alfredo. She said she wanted something fairly light, so he made it for her. And of course, back then, everybody had stuff named after them. So one day I'll create the Julian. All right, so I've got I got a ton of these little gnocchis I'm going to put into the water. Same thing, you don't want to drop them from on high because you can cause yourself all kinds of problems. All right. So here's my cream sauce. Again, I just added a knob of butter to it. You want to cook it fairly slowly because if you do it too vigorously, the cream will break and then you'll have curds in the way. Not delicious. Well, it is, but not what you expect. If it works for that nursery rhyme girl, if it worked for me, what was her name, Brian? Who sat on a tuffet? Was it Little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet eating her curds in the way?
Yep.
All right, not that old. Had a birthday last Sunday.
That's right.
That's
Julian,
right.
happy birthday. That's
Thank
right.
you. Dave and the team sent me the coolest Zoom birthday shout out. That touched me. I truly appreciate that. All right. So, I'm just going to put a board down just to clean up a little, just to have it a little cleaner. So, again, our gnocchi is floating already.
Chef Julian, we have another question that just came in. Lily had asked, very similar to the tortellini, can you freeze gnocchi the same way?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'd probably roll it into maybe 3 or 4 of the broomsticks before you froze it. That way, you didn't have one more thing to do when you thawed it out. So all you could do is thaw, cut, and go. Good question. All right. So let's see. I am going to try something. Here we go. All right. So we want this to reduce a little bit. Still kind of thick. My gnocchi is done. I'm going to take this out. I'm going to dress this gnocchi real quickly because it's, again, pretty simple. And I'm going to put all of this in one bowl. This is really like 3 servings. Maybe you can put it out family style. I'm not going to lie. I'm doing this a little bit off camera so I can put the ugly ones on the bottom. Magic of television.
Chef, we have a couple of questions. In terms of the Alfredo sauce, is there a specific consistency that you're looking for?
So you're looking for, so this is boiling a little bit because I'm not paying a lot of attention to it, but the butter actually helps it from breaking. So you can see it's getting a little thicker. I want to maybe reduce this by about 1/3. So that'll go for another 2 minutes or so. How are we doing on time?
We're good.
Cool.
6:56.
All right, cool.
And we also did added an extra half hour. So I'm not saying it's going to be until 7:30, but it's okay to bleed over 7 a little bit.
Cool. All right. So again, this is what I had left over in the fridge. Is it Rouse? Somebody help me out. Phonetically help me out. All right. Water in the butter bowl. So this is where we would definitely not send this atrociously dipped looking bowl out to the customer, wipe the rim down.
You do Uber Eats?
Do I Uber Eats? I could. I do Julian Eats. All right. Curbside drop off. Again, I've got a little basil. Again, we're talking being at home, right? You may not have access to fresh herbs. The inventor of this top, I'm going to put this out here. Yeah, it's cute in theory. We don't use these things in the restaurant. They always get in the way, right? And it never gives you what you need, right? So there's that, all right? So that's our tortellini. I'm sorry, that's our gnocchi for our, so here we are, right? You can see the bubbles kind of a little bigger, harder to pop. That's a good consistency. It's moving a little, viscosity in the pan. It's moving pretty slowly. So I'm gonna turn the heat off. I'm gonna add, this is where people get a little crazy with the cheese. This is only about a cup of cheese. I'm only gonna use about a half of that. I'm gonna let that melt down. And if I want to, I can garnish with the rest of it.
Chef, we've got a couple of questions that are coming through as you're going after this, okay?
All right.
All right. So when you were making your gnocchi mixture, should you add salt to that, or is there no need?
I salted like I said, when I cooked them earlier, I salted the water from my potatoes. So that's a good question. I left that out. You could, whenever you miss salt in something that you cook on top of the stove, the good thing is you can always put it in later. You can't do that with bacon, right? Once it goes in the oven, it's gone. But definitely give stuff a taste as you go, and that should help you out. So that's a great question. All right.
Okay.
So a little pinch of salt before you get started. 2 potatoes, I would probably do half a teaspoon of salt. So one of the things that I do when I salt food, I tend to think about the size of the bowl, and then I put a very fine layer of salt over the whole bowl. So if I got a bowl this big of stuff, I'll put a fine layer over everything. I know that sounds like a lot, but I'm talking really fine, especially if you're doing kosher salt, which tends to have a bigger grain. Add that salt, and I'll maybe go half of that because it's a smaller grain. So if something's this big in a pan, I'll put probably a light layer over everything. I know that sounds like a lot of salt, but it's worked for me over the years. So I just put a little bit of, again, whatever you got in the cabinet, right? Just some oregano. That's our gnocchi. That's our tortellini with our Alfredo on top. All right, cool. So we have our 2 pasta dishes. I hope they weren't too complicated for you. We didn't get too fancy, right? If we were doing this on a PBS or Food Network show, I would have made sure that my interns had, 24 very pretty looking raviolis and tortellinis and gnocchis ready for off the camera. But we're at home, right? We're just trying to figure out how to stay sane and eat well. So I hope that was good for you. Time. Did I do it perfectly?
You sure did.